As part of the Look for Less challenge, I'm recreating a Frontgate wreath. They're selling theirs for $349, and I made mine for $15.90. I'm starting this project by using some green and some white hydrangeas that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. I'm using some of this white heather that I had in my stash, along with this cascading ivy that I bought at Michael's. It was my most expensive piece of this project, and it cost me $5.50. I'm using some of this lamb's ear. I actually picked it off an old wreath, so it didn't cost me anything. I'm also using these peony lookalikes that I found on the clearance rack at Michael's for 40 cents. I'm using 5 bunches of climbing ivy, and I found these at Michael's as well for $1 per bunch. For the base, I'm using this grapevine wreath that I made from some of the trimmings of my grapevine. My white and gray acrylic paint will help me mimic my inspiration piece. I'm using my white paint in a brush and softening up the bright yellow that was in the center of these flowers. I'm making my $349 inspiration wreath as part of the Look for Less challenge. This monthly challenge is hosted by Yami, the Latina next door, and her co-host this month is Lianep from DIY Beauty on Purpose. Both of these women have amazing channels. I'm going to link them below along with the playlist. My inspiration wreath has some gray hydrangeas, and I don't have any, so I'm going to make some. I watered down my gray paint by putting it into about a tablespoon of water. And then all I did was add the paint until the petals were covered. I painted 2 bunches, and when I was done, I set them aside to dry. Before I can add my ivy to the wreath, I need to snip off the individual pieces that are attached to the base. With all my ivy cut, I'm going to start adding the sprigs to the sides of the wreath. My inspiration wreath has ivy on the sides, and it leaves a little bit of open grapevine on the top. Once my pieces of ivy were exactly where I wanted them, I used my hot glue gun to secure them into place. 2 of the focal points on the wreath are these bright green hydrangeas. I want each one to be in a tight cluster, so I'm using a piece of floral wire to wrap around the head. Once they were both wrapped, I then snipped off the extra wire. Now that both of my flowers are in a bunch, I then remove them from the stem. Then, once again, using my hot glue gun, I put a bead of glue around the wire to hold everything in place. I then cut both the flower bunches away from the stem. Once my green hydrangeas were complete, I followed the same instructions for my other hydrangeas. I found my center point on the wreath and then placed 1 hydrangea to the left and 1 to the right. And when I had them where I wanted them, I hot glued them into place. I'm going to add the cascading ivy, which is such a beautiful accent on this wreath. The ivy was a bit tangled, so I pulled it away from itself and then I positioned it in the center of the wreath. My inspiration piece has only 1 thin piece of ivy hanging in the middle, so I'm going to find that piece on the wreath and then remove the other 2. To help fill in the area under the ivy, I'm using the same type that I used on the sides, and then I'm just hot gluing it into place. I'm adding my pretty white hydrangea to the center. Throughout this project, I always put everything in first to make sure I'm happy before I hot glue it into place. I followed the white hydrangea and then added my gray to the center. The wreath is definitely starting to come together. To add my peony lookalikes, I'm first going to snip each of them away from the stem. To mimic my $349 wreath, I'm just adding them into place. I really wanted to recreate this wreath because I think that the subtle colors allow it to stay up year-round, and it has such a romantic farmhouse look. I'm removing the heather from the stem so that I can add it to the sides of the wreath. Once again, I added it to both sides, and I just love how the little pops of white play off the center hydrangea. I'm adding in some lamb's ear to each side that I actually recycled from an old wreath. I love the color and the texture and how it adds just that little bit of extra layer over the ivy. I'm using the 2 long pieces of ivy that I cut from the cascade, and I'm just going to snip them in half. This ivy is smaller and lighter in color, and I'm adding 2 pieces to each of the sides. With the ivy in place, I'm going to start fluffing up all the different layers on the wreath. To finish my wreath, I'm making sure that the ivy is cascading down the front, and then I'm going to add the last bunch of gray hydrangea right in the center. And with that, my Look for Less wreath is complete. I absolutely love the way my wreath came out, and it only cost me $15.90 compared to theirs, which was $349. Thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed my project, and I will see you soon. Bye, everybody!